Welcome to the Live to Lift Up podcast. This is a storytelling initiative based on the love, the life, the lessons, and the legacy of Sandy Mohonathan. Thank you for joining us for this episode. My name is Sandy Mohonathan. I'm your host of this podcast. And in collaboration with the team, myself, Claude Mohonathan, my dad, Pranay Govender, and Vikash, we have put together this storytelling initiative to share with you all to continue the legacy, the wisdom, and the life that was Sandy Mohonathan. And today I'm delighted to welcome our next guest, Heather Third. Hi, Heather.
Hello, Danielle. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good today, thank you. And I'm excited to have you here today to share the story, your memories, some of the lessons that you shared with Mom. So thank you very much for your time. For all our listeners, just a recap on why LiftUp. And it's a very special acronym that was intentionally chosen. The L is for love unconditionally, because Mom loved unconditionally. The I is inspired through kindness. The F is for foster growth. The T is together, because together is how we rise. The U is for universal global citizen, because Mom was absolutely a universal citizen. And the P is for passion, because what was Mom without adding passion to absolutely every part of life that she could? So without further ado, Heather, thank you so much for being here today. I'm very excited for you to share with all our listeners, number one, who you are, please. How you met Mom, where you met Mom, when, just as much of the details as you can. So I think let's start there, please.
Thank you. And thank you for inviting me. I met Sandy when I was working at Microsoft. Sandy joined us as the head of HR, and I was the head of marketing. And it wasn't long before we figured out we both had a wicked sense of humor. And we really bonded quite quickly in the corporate environment where things often were a bit staid and a bit boring. And we kind of made things a little bit more exciting. So we became very good friends quite quickly. In a place where it was, with the more the stress, the more fun we could find. Although Sandy's approach was very different to the previous HR director, so it was quite refreshing, and we really spent a lot of time getting to know each other quite quickly. My background was very much in marketing, but I'd grown through the ranks in Microsoft. So I'd come out of a world where I'd begun as a journalist. I'm trained in PR. I'd started in Microsoft at a challenging time in Microsoft's background in South Africa, where PR was one of their biggest challenges. And so I then grew in the company. And at the stage that I met Sandy, was holding quite a strong position in terms of how I'd grown in the ranks. But I needed definitely at that time somebody who would give the kind of support, and Sandy was always that kind of person. I think we probably connected because we both saw an opportunity to kind of support each other. So that's how I met her. And from there, we just grew that friendship from a work environment, and our best times. And Danielle, I think I've kind of told you some of these as well. Is our best times together were when we were traveling, because traveling was always about something serious. We had to go and present, or we had to go and be somewhere, and there was a lot of prep and a lot of stress. And then in between, there was the opportunity to go and explore. And generally with Sandy, you could explore a shop quite easily, and multiple shops. And I love watching other people shop. So we would go shopping together and find knickknacks to bring our children or our families home. And so, in fact, today I still have many of those things scattered around, kind of little things that we bought together or we saw together that we thought were really special.
Love that. because it's so much of a kind of a mix between, like you shared, there's the serious side, traveling comes some serious stuff, and you're there for business purposes, but regardless, you found the fun in life. And I think I want to start there. Could you please share with us some of the most fun memories you have with mom, and when you share them, why you've picked those that come to mind? I think the reason I want to know this is because life can get really heavy and serious, and to be able to inject fun and frivolity as much as possible keeps that childlike essence alive. And I feel that's a very in speaking to you, Heather, and in our bond and connection, it comes through so strongly that that's almost like a value that existed between the both of you to build that love connection. So off the top of your head, some of your most fun memories.
I don't know why this memory sticks with me the most, but when I think of Sandy, I'm on a bus. We're together. We were in Turkey. Istanbul was a kind of mini head office that we needed to travel to quite often, and we're sitting together in the two seats in the bus. At the back of the bus, like naughty school kids, kind of like we chose the back seats always. And we're on the bus towards between a venue and the hotel, or between a venue and where we needed to go. It's not clear to me why the bus trip is just to me just the epitome of why I remember Sandy and that laugh. Oh, she's giggling and I'm snorting and she's giggling. Okay, so we've made some jokes. I know that we've got an in joke, and I can see this so clearly. And we were traveling together and just giggling and laughing. And to me, that just lifts the whole idea of we were probably on our way to present, because I know what we're wearing. We're wearing kind of power dress, right? Because we were power dressers of note. We power dress, but we're in a bus and we're giggling, we're snorting in the back seat. So there's something in this vision and this memory that I have of your mom, and I know that we were on our way to a trip where things were going to get serious, but we were definitely going to have as much fun on the way that we could, just to be able to de-stress. And I think that's something your mom taught me a lot, was to be able to not take things so seriously, even though it was really important from us both being very ambitious, both building our careers at the time, still really very much in a period of proving and building and ensuring that we were the best we could be in the field we were, um,
Mm.
but still have fun along the way. And it's a value I cherish from Sandy. Another moment I can tell you that we definitely, I have as a really clear memory of her was, we were in the States. We were on a massive group conference where people came from all over the world, and we all had to be in one place that time of the year to be able to get what was going to be the kickoff, what's the theme. Everybody was getting their rah rah and their kind of, we're gonna all, this is where we're going for the year. And we snuck away because coming from South Africa, the travel was quite far, and you would always arrive probably a day earlier. You needed some time to be able to kind of decompress. And we were on our way to one of the value marts or a chain of stores, and we popped in and we found some smaller things. I was never the big spender or I would never come home with big bags full, but Sandy managed to collect lots of things in many bags, and I would kind of carry her bags with her. And she bought me the most gorgeous dress that I would never have bought for myself. I would never have bought it. She saw something and she said, "But it'll look stunning on you." And I was like, I don't know whether I couldn't wear it. I'm like, it was a little bit short and it was a bit slinky and it was a bit tight and it wasn't the thing I would do. And she's like, "No, you're gonna wear it." And then I got back to her room and we threw our stuff on the couch, and she took it out and she made me put it on. I still have the dress because she was able to see something in people. And that's for me, for Sandy, this is where we became really, really special friends. She would see things in people and really value that that's what she could see, she could actually bring alive. And you may well not have seen that yourself. And then she was able to kind of almost um, nurture it and make you see and build confidence. And so that's a very tangible way of me explaining how Sandy helps. And I've seen this in other people where she was able to actually help and believe in somebody and then build that confidence in them to support them all the way, but never taking anything away from them and always making them believe it was all their own doing and all their own work. And that was a really, really key thing that I remember Sandy for.
Thank you for sharing all of those. There's so many pearls that have come out um, behind the why of the fun and how that love connection grew and so human. Um, Heather, you've drawn on the fact that she saw something in each person and was able to almost cultivate it, nurture it, give it space, give it room, and highlight it. That really is, I think, the epitome of the I in the letter lift up, inspire through kindness. You know, I love the story that you share about the dress because that's so her. Number one, buying things for people, and not just for the sake of it. It came with intention. It was very thought through and thoughtful. And again, just that simple dress, or not, that doesn't sound like a very simple dress, but the simple act of the slinky, sexy dress that was purchased to be able to help you see a different side of yourself, or I don't know, view yourself in a different way that would further inspire you and grow you. And I think on the point of fostering growth, or the letter of F, are you able to draw on an experience or a time where she really supported you to grow in, whether it was personal, professional, whatever it might.
So the story continues. And Sandy was really pivotal in a very large change in my career. So um, a, a little while on, I can't remember how many years it was, but we hadn't worked together for very long, but we'd already become quite good friends. Um, and I had a big decision to make in my career. I could either carry on and be a career woman. I had two children, wonderful husband, still do. And I'd spent a lot of time in the corporate world and not very much time in my family life, but family was one of my true values. And we'd done a lot of work in terms of HR and understanding what my values were. And Sandy had helped me unlock that and understand it. And the more I understood it, the more I understood the tension that was being created by my corporate ambition and yet my home ambition to be at home and to be a mom and to be able to find balance. And finding balance was really challenging. And Sonia really, really would sit through conversations where I would like really think, what would I do next? How am I? And I was 40, probably having a midlife crisis, but not realizing it. Kind of thinking, what am I going to do next? What is my next move? But highly successful. And this is a really interesting point. It wasn't that I felt like I was failing or I needed to change anything. I just was feeling like I had the next decision to make in my career, but it also, whatever that decision was going to mean, it meant there would be an impact on these values that I was trying to understand even more and more. And I decided to leave corporate life, but it was a huge decision, and I'd spent a lot of time. Sandy had a great couch in her office, and I remember used to climb into that office and sit on the couch and say, well, what am I going to do? And she'd say to me, but you'll be okay. You know what you're going to do. You're going to make a decision. She never made the decision for me. She never knew what my decision was going to be until I'd made it. But I knew that if I went to the couch and said to her, and it sounds like she was my therapist, but it was more the fact that I knew I had a safe space to go to Sandy's office and say, I think I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go. And then I felt like I was almost, because we worked together, I felt that I was betraying her because we worked together. And she was just so incredibly open about being able to discuss, and never jealous, or never, uh, I never felt that she had anybody else's interests at heart other than mine when I sat and discussed this big decision with her. And it made a big difference to me. We became even closer friends. I did move on, and we didn't work together anymore. And it wasn't because we worked together that we were friends. And I think often that's what happens in friendships in corporate. You find somebody you're friends, but you're boredom friends, right? You're corporate buddies. And definitely weren't. And that was, I think, a pivotal point in our friendship, in my life, and in how she really helped me make a decision without making it for me.
That's such a poignant memory for, not that, just for yourself, Heather, but for all of us as the listeners, myself included. Um, when you said the couch, like a therapy couch, I'm glad you said that, because that's what it started to sound like, a therapy session. Come into the office and offload and share and, take it out. And I'm here to give you counsel and be that sounding board. And that's very much the safe space that mom created in who she was for so many people. And that human quality about her, that resonance, that warmth, that openness, like we said, the rooted in fun, no matter how serious things can get, it's rooted in fun. I think all of these qualities and the values that she held created that safe space for each person coming into her life to feel that they can just be themselves. They can be themselves. They can go on and live their best lives, understand themselves better, unlock in themselves something that they hadn't seen before. And in saying that, that really would create a formidable combination in knowing who you are, and in mom being who she is, that together you must have created magic. I have no doubt. Are you able to recall an experience or a story and a memory on anything significant and poignant that you both created together? Because you spent significant amounts of time together in the corporate space as well as personally. But are you able to share with our listeners something that stands out in this regard?
It's funny, and I hadn't thought about this before, but there's something that sprung to mind straight away. Did you know that your mom introduced yoga into the corporate world? So we both had a love of yoga, and obviously, with your dad as well. I think it wasn't long after he had qualified as an instructor, and we were looking for wellness ideas. So wellness at work, now it's massive, right? But at that time, your mom was really kind of, I would say that she was one of the first ones who started looking at ways that we could bring wellness to work. And one of the things she wanted to introduce was the ability to have yoga classes at work. And yet there weren't very many people who were either involved in it or able to, or the interest wasn't really there, and the conversations hadn't really happened because this was work. This wasn't a studio, right? It was kind of, these were like, it sounds weird now, but it was like really odd to think that you would do anything other than work at work. But we did, and we introduced. So from a marketing point of view, internal comms and employee communications and employee engagement was where HR and marketing overlap. And so that's where Sandy and I would put our heads together as to what can we do to increase culture and to improve communications. And that's where we built, if you want to call it magic, that's the kind of magic we would build together if we could. And so this initiative was really around bringing balance which was one of my key areas. Now you know why, because I was struggling with it myself, was how do I find balance, getting up at 4 in the morning, trying to figure out how I'm going to do the kids and the lunch boxes and get to work and do all the meetings and still have a smile on my face and be a nice wife when I got home. And how do you balance those kind of things in corporate life, which is, and then what could you do to help the teams that were struggling with that too? And so we introduced yoga classes after work. Um, and I remember being in those classes, and that was something that was really cool. That was so we actually got to be able to do yoga together, just because we were at work, and it was a really cool initiative to start. So I think that was pretty magic.
That is a very, very cool story because yes, yoga in corporate, I mean, even for today, right? If you had to think to do something like that is still a little bit not risque, but not common. So back at the time where both of you put something like this into practice, I think is beautiful. That's absolutely creating together to help others rise. And the fact that you also joined those sessions, Heather, says a lot. Means, you weren't dictating, you had bought into what it is that you both believed in as well. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. In terms of the you in Universal Citizen, you'd mentioned that you and mom had traveled to Turkey. You'd mentioned the US. Where and also in a personal capacity, traveling together, etc. Could you share with our listeners a couple of the places that you'd both traveled to, and if you have a favorite, could you share your favorite?
Traveling together, I think internationally, that was always business. And that was really, I would say, Turkey, mm, and the US, a little bit of Europe. So some would have been France, but all because of different meetings. So a little bit of Paris, a little bit of Miami, a little bit of Seattle, and a lot of Turkey, a lot of Istanbul, and a lot of Antalya, maybe. Those were really the places where we would find ourselves. But then back home, in South Africa, we found out that we both, and it really was coincidental. We, as a family, have always enjoyed KZN. So we've always enjoyed being, and a lot of that was because we fish as a family. So deep sea anglers. So I have two boys, as I've mentioned, and a husband, and I, we all fish. So we had a place on the north coast, and it so turned out, so did Sandy and your dad, and we would then meet halfway. So we would be in Richards Bay, and Sandy and Claude would be in Schlote, and we would meet and we would come and get together and have a breakfast together, or we'd go for a walk on the beach, or we'd find each other if we were on holidays. So much so that we would talk about, we're going to settle here. Well, this is where we're going to end up retiring. And then we would talk, Sandy and I would like giggle about it and kind of go, well, one day when they're older, and we kind of nudge at the hubbies and kind of go, when they're older and old and gray, and then we'll be still walking along the beach and we'll be good. And we'll have to kind of get old here together. It didn't turn out that way. We turned out going to the Western Cape. So we ended up moving down to the Western Cape, which is where I'm now in the southwest, the southernmost point. Um, and that was okay because that was where Sandy and Claude were going to end up as well, and they were going to come there. So we would spend, and this is going to be really sad, but we would spend a lot of time talking about how we would then travel together, and then we would be at the coast and like with pictures of us sitting talking about this and plotting it together, and we were kind of known as, well, you're the couple who's going to go and be you're going to be the forward posse. You guys are going to go and figure out what it's going to be like down there, and then we'll join you and we'll be down there. And I was really looking forward to that, but it won't be. But that was where we would have then traveled even more together. So we were planning, this was the time that we would then go and explore more of South Africa together.
Just to mention, I'm very sorry that that dream and those memories weren't possible. Uh, I am. It is a heart sore point for what could have been and the wanting for it. But What I am really grateful for all of you is that you have the experiences that you do. You got the taste of global and local travel together. And uh, you know, traveling really does bring out different sides of ourselves just because it's a complete world of the unexpected. And you never know which side of you is going to rear itself or expose yourself or come out. And I think when you can either look past all of that or connect with those experiences and still continue a relationship and build on it and hold it sacred, says a lot as well. So may the memories that you have of traveling together carry you into this chapter regardless, whenever you and your family on the beach doing your walks, fishing. May that carry you always, Heather. In terms of all that you've shared, there's there's a very consistent common thread, and it perfectly links up to the key in lift up: passion. There's always been a passion for life that you've shared with mom, whether it was near or far. There's always been a passion for creation. There's always been a passion for fun. There's always been a passion for exploration and adventure and the little knickknacks. And just to share with our listeners, when I'd met up with Heather end of last year in Cape Town, Heather gave to me a little bunny teddy. It's the most precious little toy or doll, if I could call it that. And I burst into tears because I feel that a lot of what you and mom shared so passionately with one another, and those gifts, those trinkets, those thoughtful considerations, is a lot of how you authentically show up in the world. What I mean by that is you'd never catch, for our listeners, you'd never catch Heather or mom in a moment where it's not who they authentically are, whether it is in a professional circumstance or a personal circumstance. That little gift that I'd mentioned was so full circle for me because it was a lot of the love language for how she so passionately lived and gave back to anything, anyone, in any way, shape, or form. Whether it was the laughter, whether it was the gifts, the dress, the dolls, the time spent and shared or made for each other. So, in that theme and thread of passion that runs throughout the stories that you shared today, Heather, could you share with our listeners, what do you feel was mom's most passionate quality for you? What made her stand out from the rest?
It's her love of life. It was definitely her love of life, whether that be love of food. We shared that too, by the way. Sandy was always very keen uh, to and I love Indian food, so she was always very keen to invite me when you were having a traditional meal or when there was something that I could experience from a food point of view. Um, and likewise, so was I. So we spent a lot of time. Food was probably more than it should have been from a passion point of view between us. uh, Sandy taught me to look from other people's point of view. I don't think that I've always. I definitely know that I have this quality from Sandy where she taught me to be able to stand away, be empathetic, put myself in somebody else's shoes and say, before reacting, what would it feel like to be them? What would it feel like? Do you understand where they come from? Not they, but you know what I mean? But can you understand the position? Can you understand the situation better before you react? In fact, what she did do very early in our friendship is gave me a copy of The Boy in the Striped Pajamas. And maybe that sums up mum's passion to me. was her ability to be able to sit on the other side of the fence and say, but you don't understand. Have you tried understanding before you react? Maybe if you understand, you'll be able to be more authentic and then you could react more authentically. And that's what Sandy really taught me.
That is spot on. Seek to understand the context of it all. Get curious. Um, do you really care enough, and are you able to put your, I suppose, triggers and emotions and feelings aside to be able to get to that common ground? Help me to understand, right? And that's a very special gift that she gave you. The Boy in the Striped Pajamas is such a sad, deep book, but such a tale of, on the other side of the fence. Have what are you not seeing, or what can you see, or how can you build this friendship alongside a fence? Um, and thank you also for showing us on the side the little note that mom had put inside of that book for you to friendship. Because you do, the two of you will forever share this friendship that is eternal. Um, for the listeners out there, I say to Heather, I can absolutely understand why mom kept Heather very close. Heather's the kind of person who embodies so much of the qualities and the values and the fabric of the foundation that makes up a wonderful human being. For example, the fun, I can absolutely see this. Find the fun and the frivolity and the silly in everything, or as much as you can. Don't take yourself so seriously. Life is going to happen. Roll with it, go with it. Um, and there's just, the love, the little, that little bunny that you gave me back was so special. It really hit me deep. It was all the story you shared about the dress. It's all these little moments and little things that create this tapestry of color and a bond that just runs so deep. And that resonates, Heather. It really does. In all that you've shared, we feel that bond. I'm pretty sure the listeners are gonna feel what you shared, not just listen to or hear what you said and shared. And a signature question that we ask every one of our guests, and sometimes it comes through automatically. You know where their inspiration and the people that have lifted them up come from, and there are some people that we categorically ask. And for you, I'd like to categorically ask this question: who lifted you up today or in life, and how are you choosing to lift others up?
Sandy definitely is the person who lifted me up. I told you there was that moment of I really needed to be able to make a monumental change in my life. And she came along just before. Why? Because it was really important that I met somebody like her to be able to help me understand what that change would need, what it would mean, and what the support would be. So she helped me, she lifted me up to be able to do it. And we built a friendship unknowing. Now, in retrospect, I can see the reason. We used to always say you have friends for reasons and friends for a season, but she was a friend for a reason. What am I doing and who am I lifting up? I I really feel, and I said this at the time, that Sandy left so soon. She had so much to do. She was so big. There was so many things to do, and she was so life was just there were so many things still left, right? Because she was just so many. She was so much. I don't know how to explain it. My words. I don't have enough words to explain how I just felt like her list must not yet be done. And so I think my list is to be able to continue with that. So where I see an opportunity to be able to lift up and continue or to support somebody in a way, whichever way is shown is something that I can do and to be able to help by doing that and continue lifting in her legacy in the way that she showed me.
Makes sense. You've definitely taken a leaf then from Sandy Mohonathan's book and life. If that's how you are lifting up in all shapes, forms, in whatever way that you are able to, then you are living that legacy. Her job with you was done for sure. Um, because that is evident in all that you've shared, how you choose to live life, and how you choose to lift others up, and how you make those choices, those everyday moments and choices, right? It's that conscious space. And thank you for being that conscious human, Heather. Thank you for bringing your whole self to this conversation with lightheartedness, with fun, with depth, with memories, with just the lessons. And this is the core and the root, the nature of this podcast, is that every story that's shared, not only does it share a part of Sandy Mohonathan from a different perspective and lens, but it also further draws out the wisdom, the lift up, the the stories that each of our guests share does exactly that. It shows and tells the lessons, the values, the legacy, and our hope is that every person listening draws from this to be able to draw strength and courage and more room within themselves to heal and to move and grow their own legacies. So thank you for sharing with us how you choose to lift up. I've felt it, I've experienced it, and for our listeners as well, just to give another layer to Heather, is that there's been many a Friday night that have been particularly difficult for me. It's almost like it's the time to decompress. And Heather has very much been the person that's held space, who's reached out, who's lifted me up. So it's not just words, it's something that's genuinely felt, and you are sharing that. So thank you for sharing and spreading your light. It matters, it means something, and I'm very grateful that you've made the time for us today and to share all you have here. So thank you.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
No. And to each and every one of our listeners who has continued to tune in, subscribe, like our Spotify, YouTube channels, follow the content on Mom's social platforms. Um, thank you. Thank you for making that time. And I think the most recent piece of feedback that we've received from a listener was that it continues to inspire them to lift themselves up, to draw from the lessons, to move with the pain, and to channel that into something greater for a legacy they're able to create for another human being. So that's how we know that this podcast is doing what it's meant to do. It is lifting up. So thank you for taking the time, to our listeners. Thank you for that. And to Dad and Pranay for the concept and for bringing this to life. Thank you. To Vikash Majaria, the man behind the lens who does all the editing, the everything that you see that comes out as the final product. Thank you very much for your time and giving it so openly and freely. It's appreciated. And from me, the host, I'm incredibly grateful to connect with each and every one of our guests, to ask these questions, to unearth as much as I can for all of you, the listeners. I'm grateful to be this role and place. So, to all of you, thank you for lifting us up and for your time. Take care and God bless.